Just going to wait for a minute for this to start on YouTube. Welcome to Journey Through the Eyes, the EMDR podcast that highlights the clinical conversations with me, your host, Kathy on the Couch. I'm here today with Dana Strickland, and we are so excited to be here today with her. Dana is a licensed professional counselor, and she's also an EMDR consultant and brain spotter. If you don't know what that is, that's exciting. In both Arizona and Texas. And so today we're going to talk about military sexual trauma, and we're able to discuss how we work with survivors of sexual trauma. So we're going to kind of turn it over to Dana, let her introduce herself, and kind of discuss her topic today.
Hi, thank you so much. So yes, I am Dana Strickland. I'm the owner and a therapist in my practice, Full Life Counseling. We're in Sun City, Arizona, but I'm also licensed in Texas. And I'm an Army veteran. I also come from a long line of military service in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really familiar with that culture. And I don't know, I guess not to drop heavy right away. I had a personal experience with military sexual trauma, and going through that process, I felt sort of stuck for a long time and didn't really know what to do with life after that.
Right.
And when it started to click in for me several years later, it was, oh, I want to help. And then, okay, how do I want to help? Who do I want to help? And then I became a therapist specifically to work with other survivors of military sexual trauma. So it's not just a passion, it's a purpose, and helped me reintegrate and rebuild a life for myself that I could be present in, and understanding that that is possible, that you can have a life again and actually live it, not just be walking around
And traumatized.
kind of, zombified. It was huge.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I remember first hearing about specifically military sexual trauma through a training here that came out. And so it's definitely something that's not heard or seen or talked about or discussed. So I felt it was important to highlight it here today. And can you tell us a little bit about your military experience and kind of how you became to be a therapist?
Yeah. Like I said, I grew up I was an Army brat. I was in a military family, and that was all I'd ever planned for my life. And I had it laid out in my mind from the time I was very young. I was going to be enlisted first. I wanted the drill sergeant hat. I wanted to be a drill sergeant. They were the epitome of everything amazing for me. So I enlisted, went through basic training, Fort Jackson, Relax in Jackson, sometimes they called it. Um, and then was stationed in Fort Gordon, Georgia. I think the name of the base has changed since then. And then Fort Carson. And when the assault started happening was in Fort Gordon, and then continued in Fort Carson. And that took over everything in my life, was just trying to survive that. And there wasn't, it was very complicated trying to find someone to talk to. And then when I did start to disclose, there was an immediate turn it around on me. And I was wrong. I was the bad guy. How dare I say these things? And then going through base mental health, had a psychologist say, but aren't you a soldier? Aren't you trained to fight? And then I just shut down. And bless you.
Thank you.
Became a statistic. And typically, whether someone reports or doesn't, they wind up being discharged within 2 years of the time of an assault,
Okay.
whether it's a single incident or ongoing. So
Um,
I became a statistic. And just the ripples of all of that were something that I carried around and didn't know if I could talk about it. So I just shut down for a long time. And it was this going from, I'm so proud of myself and
mhm.
this is what I've always been wanting to do, and feeling like you're a part of something. And you don't go into it imagining that the people that you're supposed to protect and that are supposed to protect you are going to turn on you in those ways. And looking back on it and seeing it through the my therapist lens, I can see how the basic training and different aspects of that they break you down very quickly for a purpose. And there's this buildup, and you're supposed to be really bonded and have this new sense of identity as a soldier.
Mhm.
And it's a false sense of identity, though. And you get very much in this us or them, us or them, us or them. And you're either us or you're them. And that is helpful when you're deploying, when you're going into a situation where you're really fighting for your survival. And where it is not helpful is that you really don't know who is a part of the us.
Yeah.
And it, you have to put blinders on and assume that these are the best of the best people, that they are, you know, they're operating from this
Mhm.
high moral space, highly ethical space, that they are safe, because that's how we think of soldiers and really people in any branch of the military. We think of them as being so morally upright and so strong and so protective, and we don't want to think of them as someone who would assault someone else. So to maintain that dissonance, it gets flipped on the victim, and it kicks into that Darvo,
Yes, the
you
Darvo.
know,
Yes.
mhm, that
Yes.
loop.
So deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender.
Hmm.
I think it's
Yes,
Jennifer. I might get the name wrong.
I do.
Psychologist that produced it. Yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, I think you're saying a lot of really important things. How did that
Mhm.
transition into a therapist? How did you kind of get out and into the therapist life?
I was just going through the motions of life for years,
Mhm.
not really knowing or having any kind of idea about what I wanted to do, just trying to survive one day at a time, but it was really kind of numb. And it was not until we were in, I was in San Antonio, and I was with some people, and while we were in the car, we gotten a call that someone we were very close to had passed. And I was doing as what's typical for me, which is just to go inside with my feelings and observe what's happening outside. And was seeing how everybody was processing, everyone else anyway, was processing their pain, but they were doing it together. And it wasn't taking the pain away, but it was helping. And it clicked in, I've always wanted to help people and be of service to
Yeah.
people.
Mhm.
And it started clicking in that this is a way maybe to be of service to people. And that even if it isn't a mutual sharing where I'm spilling out all of my stuff, that I can hold space for people. So that started to put me more on a path of how do I start taking care of myself so I can actually hold that space for people.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at different licensure types, and I knew who I wanted to work with, but I also knew that I didn't want to work for the VA.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
I specifically did not become a social worker because I did not want to
Okay.
work for the VA. And
Uh-huh.
the VA has a thing against LPCs,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and that's fine.
Mhm.
But I was trying to buffer myself from the temptation because
Uh-huh.
I knew that I cannot change that system.
Right.
It's too big. I can't do it by myself, and that's okay. So for me to help people, I needed to be able to help people from outside of the system. And so that helped me narrow down. I found a program that I could go to while working multiple jobs to try to pay my bills, and just went from there.
And
And
then you'd find EMDR. So
as an intern.
oh, as an intern. Okay. Tell
Mhm.
me about that moment for you, and we'll kind of lead into the blending of the two.
Yeah. So while I was still in my graduate program, I went to a training out at Phoenix Children's Hospital that Dr. Robert Roten was facilitating. And I don't remember the name of it. It was a long time ago. And it was about our neurophysiological responses to stress, and how essentially there are no bad kids,
Mhm.
and that kids are not going to be more regulated in their environment than the adults. And it looked at the long-term effects, the physical effects, emotional effects, all of these, the fallouts of trauma, especially when we don't have a supportive environment around us.
Mhm.
And that was one of the first really big times where I felt like I wasn't broken, and not broken, not crazy, just, oh, my body was doing what it was supposed to be doing. And they don't really teach you that in graduate school. They don't go into that much depth,
Right.
but it was like a Las Vegas strip's worth of lights went off in my mind, and it just started clicking together. And all I wanted to do was focus in on these bottom up
Yeah, right.
strategies.
Uh-huh.
How do I work with someone and help them work with their body
Uh-huh.
so they can start to shift these things?
Mm.
And then I just started asking questions. Everywhere was going, what kind of therapy do you do? What do you like as far as finding positive results and it being helpful? And a lot of the teachers or instructors were saying EMDR, EMDR, EMDR. Okay, what is that? And just kept asking questions. And when I got to my internships, I was asking other people about EMDR, and someone someone actually laughed at it and said, "How stupid is that? You're supposed to look at a light, go back and forth like this, and then all of a sudden you don't have PTSD anymore. Come
Same.
on." And
Same. Yeah.
so I was like, "Oh, okay." And I signed up for a training immediately.
I took a while after that. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's okay. It's not. And mine was a supervisor, and he said, oh, how stupid is that? You just go with your arm back and forth. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
that's kind of crazy. And so I was like, and then I realized what it was, and I was like, you're wrong,
Mhm.
boy.
Yes.
Mhm.
My stubbornness and my want to do what I want to do
Mhm.
and not quickly comply with someone else, it kicked in pretty hard.
What do you call that part?
Oh, I don't know. It's my sassy part. I love it so much.
Uh-huh.
Jacqueline. Um, and it's a joke in my family almost. It's, if you really want me to do something, don't push, because I will not do it. I might have done it on my own, but because someone pushes,
Mhm.
no, I won't. Or if someone tells me, no, you can't. No, watch me. Yes, I will. I will do that thing. So I've learned to work with it better. We've renegotiated that job description so that it does not turn around and bite me in the behind so much. But it's definitely there. I think you froze. Can you hear me?
I am sorry.
No, that's okay.
This stopped, so we'll have to put it together in one video. So let's go
That's
back.
okay.
It's kind of like in the middle there. It's like, no, I'm shutting down. All right, here we go. Okay, so we're still going. So tell me a little bit about you have this transition to EMDR. How do you kind of combine the two with military sexual trauma?
I understood by the time I was getting that training
Hmm.
that you are not going to talk therapy your way out of all of those trauma responses because you can't.
Hmm.
You're not connected enough
Hmm.
to the part of our nervous system that really feels and understands that we're safe to access those other skills and resources. So we're going to keep reenacting our survival strategies. And one of the things that I loved about EMDR is that you don't have to talk that much about it. And the trauma really lives in the details and the retelling of things.
Yeah.
And that's so much pressure, and it stops people
Hmm.
from really touching on those things in therapy. That idea that I have to go and relive every detail of it.
Right.
And once we've opened up that giant Pandora's box, then I just get to go home and be in the world and be miserable and not know what to do with it.
So
So go ahead.
if somebody's dealing with this in the military, what would you recommend resources maybe now that you have developed or thought about or learned about for someone going through this in the military?
There are not enough. There are still some resources available.
Hmm.
That's still not enough. There are, depending on the branch, they might call them something different. They're STAR programs, SAPR programs. I know that they are there. My hot take on it, I guess, is that I don't actually recommend leaning into them. It's my
Okay.
unpopular opinion.
Mhm.
Um, because while they are well intended, they're really not safe.
In the
Um,
institution way, they're still in the institution.
it, yes.
Mhm.
The privacy is not there.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, even unfortunately, or at least a consistent thread that I've seen show up in stories from clients that I've worked with
Mhm.
is that someone who is a part of that program would then become a perpetrator
Oh,
later on.
Lord. Oh, okay. So they're finding
Um,
victims that way.
Sometimes, and not every single person,
Hmm.
and still sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, so really looking for resources that are off base outside of the system. And a, a really important thing is for providers to be very clear on the different types of reports, what that means, um, and to know whether or not someone has reported it. That if they haven't reported it, because TRICARE, especially if someone is on active duty, TRICARE basically owns the chart, which means the primary care owns the chart, and you will lose control of it. So if they haven't reported it, don't include that in documentation that could ever be pulled. Keep it in a completely separate document.
Mm-hmm.
But there are different resources that are outside of the system that are pretty great. Like the Pink Berets, they're based in Texas,
Okay.
and they have really cool programs there. They have equine assisted, they have EMDR, they have groups, all sorts of different things.
So as you kind of think about this, so this client, let's just say this hypothetical military client, what
Mhm.
are some considerations to help them establish safety and trust before even starting EMDR? So they find you outside of the
Mhm.
system. How do you then begin that sense of safety?
A lot of it is just in that connecting and holding space and asking those questions,
Mm-hmm.
um, and finding out who, if they're still having to work with the person, there can be a difference. Was it another service member who perpetrated this? Was it a contractor? Was this reported? Was it not? If it was, what kind of report? Um, there are more open open reports. It's essentially like filing a police report, but through the military police. And then there's more of a closed report where it gets reported through your chain of command,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't necessarily go to the military police. So they just handle it in-house. So finding out about those things, finding out about if they've told anyone, how have those people responded?
Right.
Have they been supportive? What kinds of other supports do they have in their life?
Mm-hmm.
And whether they're active duty or reserves and National Guard in a different component, that that can also make a difference as far as the resources and how much they're exposed to the person who harmed them.
Right.
But then you need to look at outside of their military service, if they're in a reserve or a National Guard component, do they have a job outside of that? And do they have their basic needs being met outside of their their service?
Mm-hmm.
What's their social life like? Understanding in general how they take care of themselves. Sleep is a really big problem for service members in general.
Oh, okay. Uh,
Drinking also can be,
yeah.
because it's really encouraged to binge drink. Um, Looking at a lot of those different things, access access to any other kind of resources, supportive friends, where do they tend to go?
So when you think about this as a therapist, what are some techniques and adaptations maybe for therapists working with this population that you recommend?
A lot of resourcing.
Okay.
Do a lot of resourcing, grounding and somatic polyvagal work.
Okay.
It's very important because through all of your training, you learn to disconnect from your body so
Mm-hmm.
you can continue to push through. And there's this really strong drive for mission first, mission first, mission first,
Mm-hmm.
which puts you in a space of white knuckling everything in life and just working and putting one foot in front of the other. So it can be really hard to reconnect to yourself,
Yeah.
even if someone hasn't experienced the sexual trauma, just for veterans in general. It's hard for them to reconnect to their bodies because it's ingrained into you to disconnect.
Right.
And most veterans are not very likely to talk much about their feelings. If they were not issued, why do you have them? So getting in touch with those things, understanding that that part of resourcing can take some time, to be patient with it. And the attunement is very important, and also to be able to find that line. I've heard it referred to as high fluff, low fluff. High fluffy doesn't usually go too far because it's too fluffy, it's too soft. So finding that Goldilocks space and looking really at all of the ripples of what has the person made it mean about themselves. And did they experience the betrayal from all of those other spaces, from their chain of command, from the other people that they were serving with, and how has that impacted them, and that level of shame, and also understanding their other life experiences and how that might have fed into it, and helping them to establish a different source of identity, because it does get shifted very much into, I am an American soldier. It's literally in the soldier's creed. It's the first line, I am an American soldier. And it gets so ingrained. So when you take off that uniform, and that is no longer your job or your role, especially if it was taken from you, essentially, you don't know who you are anymore.
The identity is all it is. Yeah.
A lot of resourcing is figuring out, who am I now? What am I going to do now? So even finding a job, if someone doesn't have one, is huge.
What do you think some of the best ways for people to find, for a listener to find an EMDR therapist who specializes in this? Is there specific training that they look for, or what would you recommend?
So really looking through a provider's profile and looking for mentions. Maybe it isn't specifically military sexual trauma, but looking for people who have a lot of experience working with service members, and make a list of providers.
Okay, good.
And then write down questions before you even talk to them. Ask them for a consult, because even if it isn't their typical practice to do a no-cost consult, you can ask and they probably would say yes. Or you can just ask them a few questions while you have them on the phone or in an email, and just ask them very directly, what's your experience with this? Hopefully they'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
The average number of therapists that people have had before they get to me is 7.
Oh, wow.
And that's a lot.
That's a lot.
And it's pretty miraculous also that they haven't given up by then.
Yeah, for sure. They're so
So
resilient.
I try to make it a point to acknowledge that, and the resilience and persistence that it's taken for them to go through so many and not quite have the experience that they were needing. So definitely ask a lot of questions, even ask about what they include in the documentation,
Yes, I think
especially
that's
if you're
very
still
important.
in service, because you need to protect yourself in those ways. And those are conversations that, even if someone doesn't ask me that, I have that conversation with them anyway, especially if they're using TRICARE. So
Because they own the note.
yep, they own the note. So if they're using TRICARE and they are the service member, regardless of what they're seeing me for, I'm very careful with my documentation because I don't want that to ever be used in a way that could harm someone.
Have you had requests for your notes?
Yes. Yes. And there have been some active duty at the time service members that I advocated for very strongly to not have the sexual trauma be used against them because when you go through the med board process of being discharged for any kind of medical reason, unfortunately still I had hoped that it would have shifted, but the psychologists that they'll have you talk to, they basically sit you in front of a computer, have you take a really long assessment, the personality, what is that called? The PID, anyway, the one that's usually at the back of the DSM. Yeah. And they don't give you any instruction, just say answer all of these questions. They don't ask for any context. And some of those questions without any context can make you seem symptomatic when, the questions about when you walk into a room, do you think other people are talking about you? They probably had the experience of walking into a room and people are literally talking about them and joking about what happened to them. So when they answer yes, that becomes symptomatic as opposed to no, that's actually my experience. And yeah, I sidetracked a little, but okay. to be willing to be careful with how our documentation is and to know how much you feel able to advocate for your clients and to teach them to advocate for themselves and to push back at the providers who are part of that system, who might be trying to lump them into a category of a medical discharge and chalking it up to mental health, but not because of PTSD. A lot of times they will try to label you as having a personality disorder.
Okay.
And you have traumatic stress injuries that are not being addressed. And I can get very spicy about that. It's one of my biggest soapboxes. So I know
finding about the trainings for therapists. What trainings, if someone is interested in this work, what trainings would you recommend?
There are not a ton of trainings that are geared toward military sexual trauma. And STAR behavioral health providers, they have tier 1, 2, 3 trainings for providers, and they're free, which I like. I love free, especially because we therapists are not highly paid. Free. The different tiers will teach you a lot about military culture and working within the TRICARE system and about some of the different issues that will come up. Military sexual trauma tends to just be a little drop in that bucket of the trainings that they do. So there are not a lot of in-depth trainings for military sexual trauma.
I'm going to write those in the show notes. Where is that at again?
It's STAR behavioral health professional providers. Let me see. Let me see if we can find their STAR behavioral health. They just changed some parts of their website.
You can find it, just send it over to me after the show. And we can include that in the show notes.
starproviders.org. And they also have a provider directory that people can access. And that could be a fairly helpful resource for people.
Okay. Anything else that you feel like is important to know?
That it's really something that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Right.
And even doing research around it, there are the numbers are very skewed because just like in the civilian world, it's going to be underreported.
Uh-huh.
So the numbers will never really be accurate.
Uh,
Um, and it- that even though it's typical to think of sexual trauma in any capacity as only happening to women or children, that it also does happen more often than you'd ever think to male service members.
mhm.
And I'm trying to think of where I heard the statistic, but it was that the average time that it can take a male to come forward and start to talk about sexual trauma is 50 years.
Oh my gosh.
And
How how do you how many of your people that you work with are males versus females?
I'd say about 65% cis female and small percentage gender fluid, non-binary, and the rest cis male.
So there's a lot. It's just
There are a lot.
it's a lot of
And
huge stigma.
yes, absolutely. And there was I don't know how long it will continue to be an option, but there are you can for a short period anyway, and still currently, there you can apply for disability through the VA for PTSD secondary to military sexual trauma.
Okay.
Um, there are VSOs that can help at no cost to gather resources and records and information if someone needs help applying for it.
Okay, yes, a veteran service
Um,
officer.
yes,
Mhm.
and that can help, especially, to offset a lack of income or being unhoused, and even just to have someone eligible for medical care, which I know not all VA medical care is the greatest, and some is better than none. But to give people access to resources because becoming unhoused is a very real risk for people
For sure.
who are discharged because of military sexual trauma.
Mhm.
So any kinds of resources that are available for people like that will help them in a wraparound sense
Mhm.
are really huge. And
And where can people find you if they wanted to maybe work with
Mhm.
you or get more resources? I know you're full life counseling. We have our website in the show notes, but go ahead
Mhm.
and say it too. So if
Okay.
people hear it.
Yes. So our website is FLC, Frank Lima Charlie,
Mhm.
NINAZ, like Arizona.com. Uh, there's on the website, there's a contact us form and our phone number. I absolutely hate to talk on the phone. I will give it anyway. So 623-977-0677.
Mhm.
And also, again, I absolutely hate to talk on the phone. Email is usually the best way to get a hold of me. And that's Dana, DANA, at FLCINAZ.com.
That's great. Yeah, you definitely have a wealth of information. I think that we'll definitely look at these free trainings and these free offerings. I think it's something that we just need to continue to talk about and highlight. So thank you so much for coming and having this talk today. I am Kathy Couch and I'm rewired360.com. I do EMDR consulting and training on grief and loss. So you can find all my resources there. We have a free community So we have a free community where you can collaborate with other EMDR therapists and a free resource library. So, um, any closing remarks, Dana, as we kind of close our time?
Just that having a Fox Mulder moment. Help is out there. The truth is out there. Help is out there, and that there is absolutely no requirement to live in a state of suffering.
Right.
There's none. And everyone deserves to heal
Hmm.
and to be fulfilled. It isn't something that we have to chase.
Right.
And that can
Good.
be a really beautiful thing to actually live life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
With the new pair of glasses and to be free and healed. So we're so
Yeah.
grateful for you. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
just spending your Friday with us and your time.
Yeah.
If anybody has any comments, just go ahead and send them in. We'll get them over to Dana, and we'll put all of our information in the show notes. So thank you to all of our
Mhm.
listeners who have joined us today for this conversation. And it will be posted up in the community here soon. So thank you again and happy